Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the seventh episode of the Soccer Scene with myself, Adrian Finnan, and joined once again this evening by Noel O'Connor. Noel, as I said previously to Ed Ryan on the Limerick Junior soccer focus, normally we've a plenty to review from last weekend. Unfortunately, in the case of Treaty United, we don't have much to review because the game between Treaty and Waterford at Marks Field, it was scheduled for last Friday, was cancelled due to the torrential rain that fell throughout the week, and obviously on Friday then, which put pay to it. I did actually, on my way down through Garryowen at the time, Noel went in at around 4:45 to the Markets Field, and the pitch inspection had just started at that time. You didn't need to be a rocket scientist, Noel, to work out that this game was going to be off. The referee lifted the ball in the air, threw it in the ground, it stuck, and there were splatters of water everywhere. So we all knew, or those in attendance knew fairly lively, that that game was going to be cancelled. I know there was a bit of ribbon on social media that it was the only game cancelled, but from the weather on Thursday evening coming into Friday morning and Friday afternoon, it was fairly clear that it was going to be an uphill struggle to get the game on.
I think so. I think Alan Patchell, Patchell got to mention, the conspiracy theorist had it that he actually poured water on the pitch to stop the Treaty game going forward. So there was a lot of conspiracies going around, all right. But yeah, I suppose something has changed in that pitch. We go back 20 or 30 years, certainly, where you could have had a flood of rain and within an hour or two. I think I was told when I was a young player, which wasn't there yesterday, there was flint under that pitch, and it was great for taking moisture. And I probably, with the revamping of it, probably that part of it is gone now. So it certainly does succumb to heavy rain. Like, if you do get heavy rain on the day of a match, I think the chances of the game going ahead are kind of slim. And in fairness, there was torrential rain on Friday. You'd even be shocked by the ferocity of it.
Yeah.
Coming there, maybe raining for 15 or 20 minutes, 5 or 6 times there on Friday. I think at 3:00 I started to doubt whether the game would go ahead, and I think within an hour or so, I think that you contacted me and confirmed that it was very unlikely to go ahead. So it was disappointing, and I think it was disappointing for Treaty. We did say that it wasn't the worst time for them to meet Waterford. Obviously, Treaty having their own troubles, but still, we said bar the last 10 or 15 minutes against that loan, they had acquitted themselves quite well and been 2-0 up. Whereas a different kind of pressure in Waterford, and certainly their season hadn't got off to a great start. And subsequently, as we heard, they parted company with their manager today. So
that was an interesting one, wasn't it, Noel? Because I know, obviously, if you look at their league, they're fifth right now, but there's 5 games gone, 2 wins, 2 draws, and a defeat. Danny Searle sacked today by Waterford. I suppose, were you surprised by those events?
I was a bit surprised maybe that it's happened so soon. I think I would have mentioned to you, like, they didn't seem to prepare as well as they should have, I thought, for the start of the season, losing a couple of really big players. We knew Phoenix Patterson was gone, but then when Junior Caterno went, maybe a week or two before the start of the season. But what really surprised me was the fact that I made out, certainly in the first game, at least 3 or 4 of last year's strong players not starting the season, because they were in such fantastic form at the back end of last year, bar obviously the UCD game. But we got a chance to see them 3 times, I think, in a short space of time against Treaty, and they were certainly on fire. We did see them against Galway in the playoff as well, and maybe the scoreline flattered them, but they still managed to get the 3 goals. But I noticed, say, at the start of the first game this season, that Niall O'Keefe wasn't playing, and he was like an ever-present nearly last season. Kind of the link between the defence and the attack. Shane Griffin didn't start. Another very enterprising midfielder with a very good left foot and a very infectious player for them. And Sobowale didn't start either. And I they weren't injured, or some of them were subs and some of them weren't. And I just felt that, maybe things weren't as pretty as from the inside as it looked, if you like. Looking in, because they were 3 players that were at the top of their game at the back end of last season, and then you were down to maybe 5 or 6 of last season's ending team not starting, and you felt that they certainly would have had an uphill battle maybe to get back into that rhythm that they had at the end of last season. But obviously a lot more going on that meets the eye. I think there's an astronomical amount of managers gone through there. I think someone told me today, I'd nearly be afraid to say how many, just in case I was wrong, since about 2020, but certainly hitting double figures.
That's incredible, really. I suppose I looked at it and I said, okay, fair enough. They've had a stop start to the season, but in terms of actual form, it's not so bad. One loss in five, and it was worse under Ian Morris, and maybe let go a bit longer. Now maybe that's part of the reasoning, Nolan, that they left it a lot longer last year with Ian Morris, and it probably cost them, an actual title challenge. And because there is part of it, you look at the table. And do you think there might have been a bit of panic, Noel, in that they look at it now, maybe one game less played, but they're 10 points behind Galway already? Do you think that was part of the reasoning for that?
I think there's no doubt about that. I think with the start that Galway have had, and that points gap already, I think maybe if there was a couple of draws thrown into that Galway start of the season and the gap was a bit tighter, I'd say they might have held fire, but they're certainly drawn on the experience, if you like, of last year as well, because probably if they had maybe even a game or two sooner, if they parted company with Ian Morris as it transpired, maybe they could have won that league, because they weren't that far away at all with 2 or 3 games to go. If they'd had another maybe 4 points, and you got to think as well, like if those 4 extra points maybe came against Cork or Galway drawn matches, maybe that they would have lost early in the season, well then like it's kind of a double whammy. It's a -2 for Cork and it's a +2 for you. So that gap really closes.
It's a funny one as well, Noel, isn't it? Because, if Waterford, do you think the decision was made before the treaty game? Because do Waterford go to Marksfield, win 4-0, and does Danny Searle keep his job then? Not saying that would have happened, but just,
no,
hypothetically, of course.
Yeah, and I think it was unlikely to happen, to be honest with you. As I said, I did really fancy Treaty for a result, and it's just a disappointing thing. I would have said, even like when they went to Galway, that they were probably better to meet Galway early in the season, because they looked like a team that were really going to really rev up and drive on, and they certainly have done that since. But it'll be a midweek game now, and if Waterford get a new manager bounce, like they did last year, even with the interim managerial change when David Breen went in, I think they went on a fantastic run after that. Maybe there'll be probably a bit stiffer opposition, so I doubt maybe that. I think it probably gave them more time to think about it. Obviously there was rumblings in the background, and maybe the fact that game was off just maybe gave them a chance to get a clear head, and they probably decided that now was the time to do it, just to give them a bit of time before the next game.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also thinking from a treaty point of view, Noel, about that game being postponed. I was thinking of both sides of the coin. So on one side, you have maybe an extra week for the likes of Willie Armshaw, Dean George, and Success Erdogan to come back in without having a game. And because of the form of the side, would an extra week off benefit them? On the training pitch, an extra week without having a game. But you're firmly in the belief that maybe it would have been a positive thing for them to actually have that game, because they may have got a result.
Yeah, I think they may have got a result. And look, when you have an experience like they had in Athlone, like the best way to get over that is to play your next game, and it's still their last game, even though it will be a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure a few of them had real nightmares about that. And normally when you have a game like that, you're kind of counting down the days for your next game, so you can kind of put it into the rear view mirror. But look, I think you're right. I think there's an upside as well. Hopefully they've taken the opportunity maybe to get a couple of hard sessions into lads. We did speak last week about, one of the worrying things is the late goals that they're conceding. It may or well not be down to fitness, but maybe if they get a chance to do a couple of hard sessions like this week and last week, I should say, and early this week before the next game, they could bring that up a notch. And I think that would be important for them going into Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you'd imagine maybe there might be a difference in shape. Noel, I'm not so sure. Obviously, 2 weeks since they played at Athlone now in an away game. Do you think that the shape would be quite similar? Because, obviously, Willie Armshaw was down to start against Athlone, but Stephen Christopher came in and played off Indicurn in that game as well. So do you think it'll be a case of having Inda up top again, much like last season, with the likes of Stephen Christopher supporting him from deeper?
Or Dean George, I think you're right. Look, in fairness, and we said success like the last 2 games, he's acquitted himself quite well, even against Cove in the wide areas. Certainly has done enough to merit a place next week. Going back to one of his former clubs again, we always say that you often get a little bit more from a player playing playing against his old club. And I think, in fairness, I thought Conor Barry did quite well on the left as well. It was one of his better games so far. And again, he's going up against one of his former clubs as well. Obviously, there's no doubt, but Enda Curran, if he's fit, will certainly start, and it's about who's playing off him. I thought it was one of Stephen Christopher's games, and look, he would have admitted himself about needing to play more consistently. It's just that, the game seemed to pass him by a lot, in that, we didn't see a lot of him, particularly in the first half. And look, that generally doesn't happen 2 games in a row. So I think that front four has a kind of a feel to it now. If they go in the 3rd game in a row with the same or similar, I think it'll do them good. And I think they have a real chance as well on Friday night. I actually, because the Treaty game was off, I got the lucky dip draw to watch Bray and Wexford, which was quite a good game to watch. It was 3-2, so there was plenty of good football in it. A couple of really good goals, but I thought Bray took over the second half. They went 3-2 up, and I thought they had 2 or 3 more really, really good chances that they could have even finished off the game, maybe 4-2 or 5-2 winners. And I thought that Wexford were a bit rudderless, for want of a better word. They didn't seem to have any shape or purpose about them in the last 20-25 minutes. Created one half chance maybe to get an equaliser, which would have been very lucky. But I think their midfield is quite good. They passed the ball around quite well. But other than that, they didn't seem to be a massive threat. And I think that it's a game that Treaty have a good chance of getting something out of, and it's a ground that they've done quite well on in the last couple of seasons as well.
I actually had proposed to watch the Bray and Wexford game, but due to my lack of patience, Noel, I think the first maybe 10 to 15 minutes were shrouded by the conditions and the camera being blocked a lot by the water. So it did improve, obviously. I did look at it. So I ended up watching Finn Harps and Cove later on in the evening, because it was the best camera angle. But yeah, judging by that, Wexford have had, like I said about Waterford as well, kind of a stop-start in terms of, it looks like they might, they win one game. It looks like, will they be able to pick up a couple of wins now in a row? It's not happening. Then they might get a draw and a loss. So it has been very inconsistent from Wexford. So, and in fairness, Treaty's record with Tommy Barrett and his team against Wexford since they've joined the league has been very good. But I suppose on the other side of that, Noel, considering the changes in squads in League of Ireland every year, you can only take the season as it comes, and you can't really go on history, can you, as well?
Not really, but like we would have said this at the start of the year, a new manager, a new backroom team, if you like, a new committee, whatever you want to call it. They have a lot to learn. There's a lot of inexperience down there. Just because you bring in players, it doesn't guarantee success or consistency. We see countless examples of that. Like, the Athlone, was it last season or the season before last, where they were tipped to maybe to mount a title challenge, and they started really well, and then they faded out and ended up second from the bottom. So look, I just players there. I see Danny Furlong started, and look, while he is a good player, he's certainly not the force he was maybe 4 or 5 seasons ago. I think there might be a bit of pressure there to have a couple of local lads on the team, because it seems to be gone, very Dublin based there. So look, they have it all to do, and they have their own pressures, and I think Treaty are well capable of going down there and getting something. And I think anything, if they got a point or 3 points, I think they'd be very happy getting back on that bus with, bringing something back to Limerick.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at it from the point of view, like you were saying, Noel, of the players that Wexford brought in, it's a player that played with them last year who's, looked quite dangerous so far, without setting the world alight, in terms of Aaron Dobbs, who did score actually for Wexford against Bray. Considering maybe the struggles that Andy Spain and Anto O'Donnell have had, maybe as a partnership early doors that we haven't seen it with Treaty in the 3 years. It will be a test for them, no doubt about it, if Aaron Dobbs does start, which I assume he will, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he will. I think most of the teams now have, fairly recognisable players up front that are going to test the opposition centre halves, maybe with the exception of Longford. But we've kind of said maybe it mightn't be a bad idea to put Mark Walsh back in there, just for the bit of experience and just to stabilise that area of the pitch. We are conceding too many goals. There's no doubt about that. There seems to be a bit of cohesiveness coming in up front, and hopefully goals will follow from that, because obviously that was a struggle as well. But look, you need to maybe start tightening up at the back, and I think there is an option to play Ben O'Riordan in their centre half, or Mark Walsh, and maybe move Andy Spain out right back, just because of his lack of experience. Not that he's had too many bad games, but Ant O'Donnell missed a whole season last year, and it hasn't started for him maybe as well as we'd like. He probably will play himself into a bit of form, but while that's happening, maybe a more experienced player next to him would be a great help, not just to him, but to the team overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the message from Tommy Barrett and his management team going into the game, Noel, obviously they haven't had a very good start to the season. Now, he did intimate that it would be their toughest season in the League of Ireland because of maybe the strength of the other squads to date. But the other side of it is, Noel, I assume Tommy Barrett he'll want to be treating this as a different, separate game, particularly with the break. It's like a fresh start, effectively, because if you overhype the fact that, you are desperate to pick up a point or 3 points, it can maybe have a negative effect and put too much pressure on the players.
Yeah, look, they'll have they'll feel their own bit of pressure. They've had since Friday at 3 o'clock to know that their next game is Wexford, which is 8 or 9 days. They should be very fresh for it, as I said, very focused. And as I said, I know that Wexford may well have strengthened their squad, but I didn't see a lot maybe that would give me a sleepless night, because Treaty have players as well that a lot of other teams would like to, to get their hands on. Obviously,
the Curran could cause trouble to Hugh Douglas and Ethan Boyle.
Well, we keep on hearing about Tommy Ton, about the players that other clubs have signed, but Treaty have the top goal scorer in the league, and they've signed a guy who's actually won a first division medal, with a professional Cork City side. So look, every team in the league has a couple of, if you like, the marquee players, and Treaty are no different to that. And that's the way that that first division goes. But look, I think they have a real good chance of getting something out of the game, and maybe getting their season up and running properly.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Alec Byrne all there. He did play against that loan. A lot of people were relatively impressed by him against that loan. It's probably going to be, I assume he'll definitely be playing next to Mark Walsh, realistically. And I suppose a guy like that is who, other players in the squad may look up to in a situation like this, Noel, because he is the only one in recent memory, in the Curran we have as well from Athlone, but having a first division winners medal.
Yeah, and I think, it's no surprise maybe that the wide players played a bit better, because when you have someone, in the middle of the park who can get on the ball and pass the ball, it certainly helps those wide players, to get more possession. And look, I was just a bit surprised maybe that it took a couple of games to throw him in, because it wasn't that anyone was tearing up trees, if you like, in the middle of the park. And the sooner he gets into the team and gets a bit of game time and gets to know the nuances of the players around him, well, then the better he's going to be. And I think it's fairly obvious he will start. It's a big wide pitch, a very good pitch down there, and I think that he will become a very important player for Treaty, and probably should start every game from now on, just to build a bit of confidence and build a bit of form, and drive the team on.
Yeah, one player we haven't mentioned much of, and you did mention that, Noel, even though the team may not have been in great form, is Shane Hallahan has played the last couple of games for Treaty. It's funny because normally when a team, has had a loss or haven't been winning, you blame the goalkeeper in some ways, but we really haven't seen Shane Hallahan. And in fairness, he made an unbelievably good save against that loan as well, which obviously got them a point as well, as it turned out, or as it transpired later in the game. But it looks like he'll be the number one. Conor Wynn is injured at the moment, but in fairness, there is some good signs from him as well.
No, I think he's been very good. He seems to be very unassuming, if you like. He went in there very unfussy. He's done the basics really well for them, and as you said, despite them conceding probably more than their fair share of goals, it's hard to pinpoint one where you said, well, the keeper could have done better there. And from coming into a team like that that's struggling a bit, it's often a bit of a downer in terms of confidence for the keeper. But he's shown his age. Obviously, he's played a lot of games, albeit maybe not at this level, but certainly has a kind of a grounded way about him. And I think it's important that he's there at the moment. And hopefully, if the rest of the team around him maybe can pick up a little bit, then we might start to see a few clean sheets. But I think that Tommy's been lucky that he's been able to turn to him, like with the keeper getting injured so early in the season.
Yeah, absolutely, and it has been mentioned on maybe another podcast or two, Noel, that there's a lack of experience in the 3D squad. I would counter that, Noel, with like you said about Alec Byrne in the current. You've Anthony O'Donnell, who would be relatively experienced considering his time with Cove as well in League of Ireland terms. Ben O'Riordan. I know Mark Ludden's injured, but Lee Devitt's coming into his 5th season now at League of Ireland level. So maybe I suppose you don't want the 3D players to get an easy cop out there that the team is inexperienced, because maybe the squad is, in terms of your Colin Conroy's and Martin Coughlin's coming off the substitutes bench. But the likes of the players we mentioned, and Conor Barry, Stephen Christopher to add to that as well, it's an experienced team generally that 3D United are sending out, to be fair.
Yeah, and success as well. Sure, I think this possibly is his 3rd season. I know he had a season with Wexford.
Because what do you class as experience? Surely after 2 to 3 seasons at a level, you are experienced at it.
Yeah, I think I think that's fair enough, and you're right. There's more than your fair share of experience in that group. So I think I don't think that's a factor in what's happened so far. I think a couple of players have been out of form. There seems to be a couple of them coming into form, and maybe they haven't got the rub of the green either, and they probably need to just get a little lucky break, if you like, or just get a result, and hopefully that they can, build a bit of momentum. But it's certainly going to be an interesting year, and we keep on saying, look, things aren't going great at the moment, but at the end of the day, they have to get to 5th place, which certainly is attainable, I think, every year. And it might make the whole thing a bit more interesting. So, look, they'll probably not look too far ahead, but they should look with a good degree of confidence for the trip to Wexford on Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, speaking of the race for the playoffs, now one game that takes place this week in the race for the playoffs, but to stay in the top 3 in particular, is Cove taking on Bray at St. Colman's Park. Both of these sides have had decent starts. I mean, I actually watched that Bray game, as I said, Cove game, excuse me, as I said, and they were 2-0 down very early on. And I thought it was going to be one of those nights, Cove will say, the long journey and all that, but they did show a lot of character coming back from 2 goals down to draw 2-2 in that game and bounce back from the Galway defeat. So it looks like they won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Anyway, that'll be an exciting game, I'd imagine.
I think it will. Again, they certainly have improved. I suppose the only one that they didn't really compete in, I heard, was the Galway game. And the score was 2-0, but it was supposed to be a lot more than that, say, if you were watching the game. I have been impressed with Bray. I thought that they would be in around that top 3. I thought they were very good on Friday night. As I said, they scored 3 goals. They probably could have got a few more. And I think they'll be a real handful for Cove. And it will be a very interesting game. And I suppose if I had to put my neck on the block, I'd probably say that Bray could come out of there with 3 points.
Yeah, I know it does. It's going to be an interesting one. I probably agree with you. I think Bray may come out with the firepower to get the victory in that one. Speaking of firepower and maybe lack of it, with all due respect to the 2 teams I'm going to mention here, Longford against Kerry. Longford obviously struggling massively to score goals. They put in what would be, I suppose, a typical away performance against Galway. We're actually, I suppose, sickened to see Darren Clark, their former winger, scoring the winner on the night after a very good defensive display, to be fair to him, under Stephen Henderson. Struggling massively to score goals. Noel, Kerry, 1-0 loss as well, very late on against that loan. That would have been very deflating for them, considering it looked like it was a draw written all over it when you're that late in the game. Hard to pick a winner from that one, although I'd have to say from home advantage, you think this could be where Longford get off the mark?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it is going to be a real struggle this year for Kerry. I wasn't that surprised maybe that Athlone won. I suppose I was a little surprised that they only got 1 goal, because I thought they had a real threat the week before against Treaty in both halves. particularly the first half, in fairness. I probably think that Longford just have the wherewithal, maybe whether it's from a set play or whatever, certainly to get a goal. And if they do well, the way they've been conceding so little, it's hard to see a way back for Kerry. But certainly a low-scoring game. But I could certainly see Longford getting off the mark. They obviously have a real good. There's a real good atmosphere there between the players, because they're working so hard, obviously, and they're so hard to break down, which means that the spirit is good there, and they'll certainly target this game for 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose on a unrelated note, League of Ireland wise, Noel, our former co-commentator or co-host, if we want to call him that, Jason O'Connor, received an award actually last week for over 10 years service as a development officer for the FAI, which actually came to my attention way later than he was actually awarded or actually given the award or presented with the award. But definitely congratulations to Jason there on the longevity, and it's a pity obviously he's not still with us, but maybe one day we might see him back.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm delighted for him. I know he'd be embarrassed for us talking about him winning awards, but look, listen, we're certainly delighted he got it, and it is well deserved. He certainly loves football, and he's doing a lot of, if you like, on-scene work. I know he's done great work out in the county since he got there, and look, it's just congratulations, and we certainly do miss him.
Yeah, absolutely. And myself and Noel will be rushing off to get to the kickoff for the Republic of Ireland versus France, which we talked about last week. So thanks once again for everyone for joining us. And obviously we'll be back at the same time, hopefully next week, to discuss all things Treaty United and League of Ireland on the Soccer